Welcome to Beat Diabetes. I hold in my hand a little paper, a little 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper that contains the plan that can beat diabetes, reverse diabetes, and drive back that monster from your life. You say, can it be that simple? And actually, there's only 5 steps and 6 months involved. And yeah, it can be that simple. The problem with beating diabetes is not that it's complex, complicated, hard to understand, hard to figure out. The problem is a lot of people don't want to even try it. And once you try it, you find out, man, this isn't so bad after all. So let's get into it. Now, I will say there's a lot of repetition in this that you have maybe heard before if you've been watching my channel and you've seen a lot of my videos. So I'm not going to suggest I've got some new thing that I haven't shown you before, but it's going to be done with a little bit of audio-visual, you might say, a little bit of visual help by use of whiteboards. And yeah, you've even seen those before, but putting it together like this, I think it'll be a little bit more easy to grasp and powerful as you really understand what's going on. So this is based on a 6-month program. And it's a more gradual and gentle way of moving into reversing diabetes. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that once they come home from the doctor, they say, I'm going to beat this and I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to pivot on a dime. I am just going to beat this monster and I'm going to do it today. I'm going to start today and with every weapon I'm going to throw at it. They don't want to be gentle. They don't want to be gradual. And if I was really high, I probably wouldn't want to be either. But the reality is, there are sometimes negative effects to changing your diet too quickly and too radically. So that's on you, how quickly you want to do it. I mean, you could take all these steps and just implement them the very first day. I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you be a little bit more gradual. But let's start with something you've probably seen before if you've been watching my videos, and that is here is a representation of your glucose levels when you're in really bad shape. Just you're a bad diabetic, let's just say. You are a severe diabetic. And what's going on is every time you eat, you're spiking way too high. We're going to call this your baseline. Now, if you're not too bad off, that might be around 100 or a little over 100. If you're a severe diabetic, this baseline could be 200, 300. But you're going up even higher after you eat. It's almost always going to be a higher spike after you eat than it was before, unless you eat such low carb that your body gets shocked and you put out your pancreas puts out more insulin than you need to. So you eat, you go up. I'm going to call this 140, but in your case, it may not be 140. If you wake up in the morning with glucose of 200 milligrams per deciliter, then you're going to jump up well beyond that. But in any case, you're going to spike. Whether you wake up with 200 or 100 or whatever it is, you're going to spike when you eat a high-carb meal. So you spike. You start to go down, but you never get to baseline level because about the time you might be headed down that way, you want a snack. So you grab yourself a bag of chips or you eat some bread with peanut butter on it or whatever your favorite snack is, or a pretzel, whatever. But let's assume it's a high-carb snack because you don't know any better. And boom, off you go again, well past where you should. Now, if you're at 100 down here, you're past 140, and that means you're in the danger zone. But if you wake up in 200 and then you go up from there, you're in the danger zone all day long. You're hurting yourself all day long, morning, noon, and night. You start to go down, but you never reach your baseline level. You never quite get to your fasting glucose because you have another meal. So up you go. You go up quite high and you go down, but you never reach baseline because before you ever get to your normal level, that is what you should be after, let's say, going all night without eating, you have another snack. So up you go, and then you start to go down, but you never get to baseline level. You never get to where you really should be or where you want to be because now it's mealtime. So you have another meal and up you go again. So boom, your day consists of constant meals and snacks and glucose spikes. And that, my friend, is a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe to become diabetic. And if you're already diabetic, guess what? That's a recipe to become more diabetic with higher numbers, higher A1C, higher fasting glucose, more neuropathy, more complications, more problems. You're just going to get worse and worse. So this is the problem. Now, for month 1, I want you, according to this plan, not to even mess with your diet much. What I want you to do is get yourself a glucose meter, or if you can get a CGM, that may be better if it's an accurate one, and just find out what foods are doing to your blood sugar. And start testing them and do some comparisons. Have a high-carb meal for supper one night, and then have a low-carb meal for supper the next night. So for one night, spaghetti, big old chunk of French bread, and a nice dessert at the end. And test yourself about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15 minutes after to see where you peak. I know they tell you test yourself at 2 hours. By that time, they want you to be back, but we're not interested so much as in getting back as we are, how high did you go? So test yourself about an hour and 15 minutes after you eat. Then the next night, after you've done a high-carb meal, do a low-carb meal. Do a hamburger patty and a salad, or 2 hamburger patties and a salad, and test yourself same time, hour and 15 minutes after eating, and notice the difference. And all month long, month number 1, all month long, you're testing yourself. You're comparing one meal versus another, low carb versus high carb. And even do some carnivore meals where you just have a big old roasted chicken, or maybe half of a roasted chicken and a couple of eggs, or whatever. And then compare yourself with some kind of a pasta meal or any kind of a high carb meal. Big old baked potato has a lot of carbs to that. And compare. But don't really mess with your diet much, especially in those first couple of weeks. Why don't I want you to mess with your diet? I want you to just see what those high carb meals are doing to you. You've got to notice it. You've got to see it on that glucometer until it gets into your brain. What's happening when you eat high carb meals? You shouldn't take my word for it. You shouldn't take anybody else's word for it. Take your glucometer's word for it, or your CGM word for it. Excuse me. Take their word for it and find out what's going on. Not only will you come out of that month knowing more than you did before about foods and how they affect you, you'll come out with motivation. You'll start to say, you know what? I can do something about this. That's the most powerful thing that can ever enter your mind when it comes to beating diabetes. I can do something about this. As Dr. Richard Bernstein found out when he started testing his blood sugar and started eating low carb versus high carb and testing and so forth. He's like, I figured out I could make my blood sugar whatever I wanted it to be. In a sense, we can all, well, maybe not quite do it that much, but in our own little way. If I want to make my blood sugar high, I can do it. I can do it. I know how to do that very easily. Just eat certain foods. If I want to keep a relatively low blood sugar, I can do that too. And if you take a month and test and test and test and don't worry so much about trying to make any changes yet and start writing it all down, you'll come out of that month knowing things you didn't know before and having a motivation to do something about it. In fact, probably you can hardly wait for month 2 when you start making the changes. So here you are, got your blood sugar is spiking all over the place, and you begin to see it by numbers, and you want to change. Now, month 2 is where you stop all in-between meal snacking. So just cutting out in-between meal snacks, things look better already. If that's the only thing you did, that would be helpful, and you'd probably notice a difference in your numbers, but that's just getting started. So that's month 2. Stop your in-between meal snacking. Now, if you say, well, I like a little bit of a snack. Well, if it's a low-carb snack and you want to tack it to your meal and eat less of other things, then that's fine. But don't eat in between meals. That's got to stop, not just for a day or for a challenge or for a 6-month period, for the rest of your life. In between meal snacks need to die in your life. So now things are looking better already. That's month 2. Month 3 is to change to low-carb meals that don't cause major glucose spikes. These big spikes are the result of high-carb meals. Low-carb meals won't do that. You say, well, Dennis, I don't believe you. I think you're a liar. I think you're a fraud. You're just trying to deceive us. Test yourself. Have a high-carb meal. Have a low-carb meal. See where you go. You will find that the big spikes come from the high-carb meals. I've seen it over and over again. Dr. Richard Bernstein, that's how he learned to manage and function and do well as a type 1 diabetic. He just stopped eating big high-carb meals. And boom, he needed less insulin. And he had things much better under control. So now your glucose levels look like this, a milder spike at each meal. You're not bouncing way up there to 200, 300, whatever. You're having a much lesser spike. Now, again, if you're in the 200s or 300s to start with, it may take a while to work your way down, but when you have lesser spikes and you stop those in-between meal snacks, there's a natural progression of your glucose levels to just start lowering. It will do it automatically. Just do those things. So month 1 is you just test, you compare, you start learning some things about how your body reacts to carbs. Month 2, you stop all the snacking. Month 3, you change to lower carb meals. Now you say, well, I don't know what a low carb meal is. Well, we've got a lot of videos about what you can eat, what you shouldn't eat. But if you're just absolutely uncertain, buy yourself a roasted chicken and have some roasted chicken and a garden salad, and boom, you've got a low carb meal. But don't put a high carb dressing on that on that salad, or that'll change. But if you put a low carb dressing on it, like some Italian dressings, some ranch dressings, and there are dressings that you can even make, you're good, and you will cut those spikes way down. Month number 4, eliminate a real breakfast that's going to raise your blood sugar at all. So now you're eating 2 meals a day. And in lieu of a breakfast, you can have some coffee with some cream and butter in it. Some people like to put coconut oil in it. Some people will just put a lot of cream in it, coffee and cream. But basically something that'll give you a little bit of feeling of satisfaction and yet will hardly touch your blood sugar because it's all fat. Coconut oil is fat. MCT oil is fat. Cream is almost pure fat. Some people drink beef broth. So guess what? You've eliminated another spike or another rise at all. So now your glucose levels look like this, almost no spike, except you may get some dawn phenomenon. So you could get some rising, not because you ate the wrong things, but because it's just morning time, and that does happen. But that's okay. That's the one thing we can allow, because that'll pretty much fix itself as you do the right thing. So you basically have 2 post-meal rises, but they're not spikes. They're just rises, and that's good. So you eliminate a real breakfast, and you've gone from this to this. Does that look better? And then lastly, month 5 is to turn your evening meal to carnivore. So this, we're going to give it a great big C for carnivore. And no, my diet is not pure carnivore. I eat salads, I eat low-carb veggies, but a lot of times the evening meal is so important. It's better to just either eat carnivore or as close as you can come to carnivore. A couple of hamburger patties, or several eggs, or hamburger plus eggs, or steak plus eggs, whatever, however you want to do it, or just chicken, or just fish. Basically, any kind of meat is carnivore if you don't put a bread coating on it. So turn that evening meal to carnivore, and for the lunchtime is where you can get your veggies. So V for veggies for lunchtime, C for carnivore for evening time. And when I say veggies, I'm not talking about potatoes, I'm not talking about corn, I'm not talking about the higher carb veggies. Beets would be another one, but I'm talking about the low carb veggies. And a Cobb salad, a garden salad, those kind of salads would be perfect for lunch. I often have Benedicta's okra soup that has spinach in it and usually has chicken in it, and of course okra. And so that's my lunch, though. I normally would not eat that for dinner. So dinner, I would rather eat a lower carb meal still. Why is dinner so important to have a lower carb meal? Because that's what's going to carry you on through the evening and through the entire night while you sleep. So it's much better to give your body less to do metabolically by eating a very low-carb dinner, and whatever veggies you want to eat, get them at lunchtime. Again, month 1, test and compare how meals affect you. Number 2, Month number 2, stop in between meal snacking. Month number 3, change to low-carb meals. No more high-carb meals, no more medium-carb meals. Do low-carb meals. Month 4, eliminate any kind of a real breakfast. Just have some coffee and cream, or coffee and MCT oil, or coffee and butter, or butter and cream. If you say, well, I hate coffee, Dennis, don't tell me to drink coffee. Well, you could have tea, you could have beef broth, or anything that really has no carbs. If you have to, have a boiled egg and any kind of a low-carb drink, and you're good. So month 4. Month 5, turn your evening to carnivore. Get your vegetables at lunch. And month 6 is simply keep on doing what you've been doing. All the changes you made in those first 5 months, just do it another month. And by that point, you will have gone from here, where you're spiking all over the place constantly all day long, driving up your blood sugar, driving up your A1C, your fasting glucose, everything getting worse, to this, 2 gentle glucose rises, which your body can easily handle. You can handle it in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. If you make it past 100, you can still handle it. Your body was made to handle gentle rises in blood sugar. That's normal, natural, and your body has no problem with that. It's when we overdose on carbs and we get this kind of a scenario, your body can't handle that. You weren't made for that. This is unnatural. You're not made for this. This is metabolic suicide. This is slow motion suicide metabolically. So instead of this, go for this. Skip breakfast altogether, except for maybe the bulletproof coffee. Have a nice lunch. If you want to eat a lot, as long as it's low carb. Get your veggies here. Have your carnivore meal. Boom. By the time these 6 months are up, most of you will be below the diabetic level. And you'll be amazed, you'll be thrilled, you'll be excited, and you'll be like, I think I can do this for the rest of my life. Now, if you don't get below that level, let's say you're 7.1, 6.9 or whatever, chances are you will have made so much improvement, you'll still be excited. Let's say you came from a 12 to a 6.9. Well, you're still diabetic, according to American standards, but you're so much better. You'll say, you know what? I think I want to do this another month, or maybe the rest of the year. And you just keep pushing and pressing against the monster of diabetes and watching the numbers come down. Almost everybody will improve. If you're a type 1, of course you're going to have to take insulin. Or if you're a type 2 that's burned out about 2/3 of your beta cells, then you may need some insulin. But for most type 2 diabetics where their pancreas still functions fairly well, you should see phenomenal success. And as the saying goes, nothing succeeds like success. When you've been at the brink of disaster, standing at the edge of the cliff, about ready to fall over into destruction, and suddenly you're pulled back, and the numbers are retreating, and the neuropathy is retreating, and the liver is improving, and the kidneys are improving, and everything is looking better and better, it's going to be hard for you not to want to keep this kind of a lifestyle. Yeah, there may be a few changes. You may be able to eat a bowl of beans once in a while, or a half of a sweet potato once in a while. I'm not saying you can never taste any of these higher carb foods, but you're going to be careful, my friend, and you're going to be so thankful for these 6 months you invested in your own life. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our uploads page is in the description.